Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi has broken his silence on the perjury charges laid against him by the National Coloured Congress MP Fediel Adams. The charges stem from Mkhwanazi's testimony before the Madlanga Commission, where he accused Adams of using his position as MP to access classified information put before Parliament's Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence unlawfully. Adams is not a member of the committee. Mkhwanazi told the commission Adams handled that information recklessly. Speaking at the launch of the festive season safety plan, Mkhwanazi said he is not afraid to be prosecuted.
We'll deal with that at the ad hoc committee. If there's any case open at the police station, anyone has got the right to open a case. Police must investigate, and if there's a crime committed and the police feels that they must take that into the courts, and the courts, if they decide to prosecute, will prosecute. I was never afraid to be prosecuted. I'm not going to be afraid to be prosecuted now. So if Mr. Adams, who I spoke about in that commission, feels that he must then use the strategy to threaten or intimidate, it's okay. I'm not afraid of that. We already understand which side of the law he is. We'll find each other at the right place. Let it happen. He must bring it on.
Human Rights Watch is calling for compensation for the victims who have become permanently disabled due to injuries sustained during the Eswatini June 2021 unrest. A report from the organization's Africa division has found that police fired indiscriminately at protesters who were voicing their discontent over alleged police brutality and the impunity surrounding the death of a university student. Dozens were killed and hundreds left injured during the demonstrations, which started off peacefully. Nomatamsanga Masiko Mpaka, who is the author of the report, says people's lives have been permanently altered, yet no action has been taken.
People are far worse now. I mean, the individuals we interviewed have lost their limbs and therefore are unable to work. Many of them were breadwinners in their families and now they can't work. Some have lost, breadwinners in their family. They've lost loved ones. They've lost sense of certain movement in their arms. They can't work and their lives effectively have altered. And whenever somebody's life is altered, especially at the hands of the government, there ought to be remedies, right? And really that was our concern. And moreover, when we spoke to some of these victims, particularly ahead of the initial start of the research, many of them were talking about how the government wanted to wish away what happened.
Lastly, the Jamaican government says Hurricane Melissa killed 49 people when it struck this week. Search and rescue efforts are continuing in the worst-hit areas, with some communities still isolated. The BBC's Will Grant reports.
With the number of dead from Hurricane Melissa steadily rising, Jamaicans' resilience continues to be tested. Electricity remains out to most of the island, and as people try to salvage their damaged homes and belongings from the floodwaters and mud, many thousands are growing increasingly desperate for aid. There are parts of the country that have been without water for several days, and food is growing increasingly scarce. In more positive news, aid supplies are beginning to come in more rapidly, with the airport in the capital Kingston largely back to normal. Smaller regional airports, however, remain only partly operational, and some are located near to where the humanitarian assistance is most needed.
For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us at +27 11 714 4459. Channel Africa News. I'm Onele Nsinsi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, Pedro Goncalves is the new head coach of Young Africans, while the Springboks are ready for the challenge of Japan. Details coming up at the bottom of the hour.
Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time.
Thank you to Onele Nzinzi and Msibudi Makura. Onele Nzinzi with our news update and Msibudi Makura with our sports headlines. It is 12:06 Central African Time and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa on DSTV's audio bouquet channel 802, on OpenView channel 628 and on www.channelafrica.co.za, as well as on the SABC Plus app, available on the Apple and Google Play stores. Join us in conversation on our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram, subscribe on YouTube at Channel Africa 1. On Facebook at Channel Africa, you can also send us your comments and voice notes to +2763. That's 406 9126. Hashtag Africa Update, and let us know which country you're in. And if you have any stories that you'd like us to highlight or to focus on, send us an email. It is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or give us a call on +2711 714 4459.
Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802.
Well, today on Hashtag Africa Update Us, in light of the developments including Sudan, Mali and the Democratic Republic of Congo, our question to you today is, what is the impact of armed conflict on Africa's peace and stability? Share your thoughts and your views on all our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram at Channel Africa 1, on Facebook at Channel Africa. You can also send us your comments and voice notes to +2763. That's 406 9126. Hashtag Africa Update Us.
Your window to the continent and beyond. Africa Update. Only on Channel Africa. Channel Africa. The African perspective.
The United Nations has called for an immediate ceasefire in Al Fashir, the capital of Sudan's North Darfur region, following its capture by the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces. The UN has warned that the fall of the city marks a dangerous turning point in Sudan's civil war, which has already claimed tens of thousands of lives. Channel Africa's Lebohang Mabange has more.
The United Nations says the conflict in Sudan is worsening, with new waves of violence and deepening humanitarian suffering. Speaking at the UN Security Council briefing, Assistant Secretary General for Africa, Martha Ama Akia-Pobi, painted a grim picture of the situation on the ground.
The conflict in Sudan has deteriorated even further. It has caused widespread suffering and new surges of horrific violence. After more than 500 days under siege, the city of El Fasher in North Darfur has been captured by the Rapid Support Forces. Only small pockets of resistance remain. Other parts of the country have not been spared from the relentless violence. In recent weeks, fighting has intensified in the Kordofan region.
Pobi said civilians are facing unimaginable hardship, with communications cut off and widespread reports of atrocities.
Communications have been cut off. The situation is chaotic. In this context, it is difficult to estimate the number of civilians killed. Despite commitments to protect civilians, the reality is that no one is safe in El Fasher.
The UN warns that the fighting is spreading to new regions and the risk of mass atrocities, ethnically targeted violence, and sexual abuse remains extremely high. The Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs and Emergency Relief Coordinator Tom Fletcher urged member states to stop fueling the war and to prioritize peace over political and commercial interests.
Stop arming this violence. Insist that stopping this conflict is more important than any narrow political or commercial interest. Those who want to leave El Fasher must be able to do so safely. Those who remain must be protected. There must be accountability for those carrying out the killing and the sexual violence, for those giving the orders, and those providing the weapons should consider their responsibilities. Humanitarians simply asking that we be allowed to do our jobs and save lives is not working.
Fletcher also condemned the expulsion of key United Nations officials from Sudan, calling it a direct attack on humanitarian efforts to reach millions in need.
So you must demand that we are able to operate everywhere, including by deploying our national and international staff into areas of greatest need. We ask you to use your muscle to create genuine pressure to ensure this. In this context, I am furious that the World Food Programme's country director and emergency coordinator have been expelled by the Sudanese authorities without explanation.
The UN Security Council has expressed grave concern over the escalating violence and urged both warring parties to protect civilians, resume peace talks, and allow unhindered access for humanitarian aid. With more than 14 million people displaced and parts of the country in famine, the war in Sudan is now the world's worst humanitarian crisis. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Lebukhang Mabange.
It is 11 after 12 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees says it is deeply concerned about the escalating brutal violence in Al Fashir, the capital of Sudan's North Darfur region, which has forced thousands of civilians to flee, leaving many others trapped inside the city with few options. Now, reports indicate that the Rapid Support Forces have moved into the city, triggering widespread fear among families who have survived 500 days of relentless siege and conflict. An estimated 26,000 people have fled Al Fashir in recent days, as civilians escaped the fighting and terror, navigating armed checkpoints, extortion, arbitrary arrest, detention, looting and harassment, and serious human rights violations as they try to reach safety. For more on this, the spokesperson and communications officer at the UNHCR, Faith Kasina, joins us on the line. Faith, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Good afternoon, and thanks for having me.
Now, Faith, just looking at the situation, just tell us more about the escalation that is taking place in Sudan. What is happening on the ground now?
So, as you have just said, it's a disheartening and quite saddening situation at the moment. Remember, Al Fashir was a city or a town that had been besieged for more than 500 days. In many parts of North Darfur, including Al Fashir itself, humanitarian agencies, including the UN and UNHCR, have not been able to have access to the people who've been affected by this conflict. So millions of people, hundreds of thousands of them, have been cut off from humanitarian aid for months on end. Now, this is just, a and saddening addition to their plight. We're talking about people, as you said, who have to navigate checkpoints, who have to go through serious human rights violations when they're trying to flee to reach safety. What we know is, as of today, the current figure right now is 36,000 people have actually fled. At the moment, people are fleeing kilometers to areas, a few kilometers close to Al Fashir. What we do know is that most of the 36,000 people are now in Tawila, which is 50 kilometers from Al Fashir, where they're seeking safety, where they're seeking humanitarian assistance. So again, this conflict it's gone on for too long. And people, ordinary, vulnerable people who have nothing to do with this conflict, have been caught in the middle. And we reiterate calls just for the fighting to end, and particularly in the Darfur region, so that humanitarian agencies can access people who need assistance to survive.
Now, there are reports of women and girls being violated. Are the perpetrators known, and what is being done to address the situation? Anything?
So at the moment, we cannot speak on the perpetrators because we have very little presence on the ground in Al Fashir. But the reports that we are getting from women and girls who are arriving in areas that we do have presence, such as Tawila, is that they have gone through, difficult experiences with, in the hands of armed groups and, armed officials. Now, it's difficult to say who is responsible at this moment, but I think the underlying sort of call is that, civilians must be protected. Civilians, including women and girls, must have their rights respected, must be given safe passage, must be allowed to get to safety wherever they can.
Now, as the UNHCR, are you able to assist the people who are still on the ground, who are, sort of in limbo, whether with aid and just with general assistance? Are you still able to do that?
Well, we're doing the best that we can in the situation that it is. It's a fast evolving situation. Access keeps moving here and there. But together with other UN agencies, local organizations as well, the entire humanitarian community inside Sudan and, in the part of the Darfurs where we're able to access, we're able to provide life-saving assistance, in the sense of shelter, in the sense of food that will get people going for a number of days before they do reach areas where they can get, full assistance. We're talking about medical help for women and girls who've gone through difficult experiences, people with illnesses, and malnourished children, for example, just trying to get their nutrition up so that we can be able to save lives. But I must reiterate that the level of assistance right now does not match the need that is going on, that's ongoing, and what's required. I mean, Sudan in itself, in general, is just gravely underfunded. We're talking about a response that is 21%, at least 21% funded for the entire region. This is the 8 countries where these Sudanese and other people who are living in Sudan have fled into. Now that's a massive underfunding situation. And so we continue to call on the international community, international donors, to just make good on their promises and, stand in solidarity with the people of Sudan and ensure that this response is fully funded so that lives can be saved.
And in terms of just international aid and assistance, what are you finding? Are people still giving, what they can at this point in time with all the crisis that the world is facing?
Indeed, we have continued to see a lot of generosity from not just the international community, but also regional governments across the region that have opened their doors to people who are fleeing Sudan, people who are seeking safety and assistance. We've continued to see countries sort of standing up in solidarity with people. But again, it still doesn't match the amount of need that currently is there. And whilst we appreciate the generosity from international community, Western countries, and regional governments, there's still much more to be done. There's still much more to be given, because again, the need is just overwhelming. And as this conflict continues, the sad reality is that this crisis is going to get worse and worse.
Well, Faith, just for interest's sake, have you managed to make any contact with the warring parties or the different factions or government with regards to the crisis that is now has become a ripple effect to the people of the country?
I think as UNHCR, our main focus is on the humanitarian assistance. There are obviously other organizations and other sort of systems that are working in terms of mechanisms that are working in terms of getting in touch with the warring parties. But for UNHCR, we are on the ground wherever we can, however we can, trying to help people get to safety, get the assistance that they need. But our call, whether we're in direct contact or not, our call remains the same, just as the UN has been reiterating and calling for an end to this conflict since it started more than 2 years ago. It's time for this conflict to end. It's time for the fighting to end. The people of Sudan have suffered enough, and they need a political solution, lasting peace, so that they're able to go back home and start rebuilding their lives.
Well, Faith, thank you for joining us on Africa Update. We'll leave it there for today.
Thank you very much.
That's Faith Kasina, the spokesperson and communications officer at the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, joining us on the line.
Africa at Play with Neto and ETO Germany.
I've witnessed something fresh, something exciting, and something very inspirational from the president of the country, William Ruto. Whenever athletes are performing to their best level, he always comes on board to reward those athletes, be it football, be it athletics, and not leaving it up to the sport ministry.
The president realizes that sports is a business. For that reason, he also reduces the number of people who are jobless, because sports now is such a serious business, and for that reason, commercialization of sports is a major way of improving or increasing employment opportunities for the young people, and that is why the president has been very persistent in trying as much as possible to inspire more sports personalities to reduce the baggage of the people who are struggling to get job opportunities in the country among the young people. people.
Francis FM Mutegi, our correspondent from East Africa in Nairobi, Kenya.
Live every Saturday and Sunday from 2 to 5 p.m. Central African Time. Conversations are happening, and Channel Africa is at the heart of them. We tell the African story with clarity, pride, and purpose, reaching audiences that matter to your brand. Partner with us and connect your business with listeners across borders in multiple languages and markets. For partnership opportunities, sponsorship, or sales, email us at partnership@channelafrica.co.za. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802. Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9.
The South African Medical Association, SAMA, has officially suspended all relations with the Israeli Medical Association, a move welcomed by healthcare workers for Palestine, South Africa. The organization says this decision represents a powerful stand for medical ethics, justice, and human rights, echoing the global call for solidarity with Palestinians.
And recently, we've also seen other national associations, such as the British Medical Association, Turkish. They've released quite strongly worded statements, although none have gone as far as SAMA to cut ties with the Israeli Medical Association, as well as to call for the suspension from the World Medical Association. It's a watershed moment that an organization has actually taken this step. And it's not an idle threat. SAMA is a member of the World Medical Association, and they can action this resolution by bringing it before the World Medical Association.
Dr. Sadiq Mullah, chairperson of Healthcare Workers for Palestine, South Africa.
Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine. Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time.
It is 23 after 12 Central African Time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. Our police in Tanzania fired tear gas and gunshots on Thursday to disperse groups of protesters who returned to the streets a day after a general election marred by violent demonstrations. A protest broke out in the commercial capital Dar es Salaam and other cities during the vote on Wednesday over the exclusion of President Samia Suluhu Hassan's two biggest challenges from the presidential race, as well as what demonstrators say is increasing a government repression. Our police ordered an overnight curfew in Dar es Salaam, a city of more than 7 million people, after government offices and other buildings were set ablaze. Internet access disrupted during the election appeared to be returning intermittently on Thursday. And for more on this, we are joined on the line by Dr. David Matsanga, who is an expert on anything in terms of African politics. Dr. Matsanga, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Yes, I am joining you live in Tanzania via satellite link. My fryer is down here, and I am able to transmit live and tell you the true story of what is going on in Tanzania.
Dr. Matanga, what is going on in Tanzania? The young people have now come out and called the President Samia Suluhu Idi Amin.
I think they are mistaken. Those younger men have never fought. They have never seen what Idi Amin used to do. You can't call Samia Suluhu Idi Amin useless. That is very bad language. And if they are younger men, we must tell them off that some of us who have been there in 1978 in Tanzania liberated our own country from Idi Amin. Suluhu was not like Idi Amin. That is the most useless propaganda, useless insult that they have heaped on the people of Tanzania. Let me come back today.
Yes.
Planes are coming in. Look, let me explain here. Planes are coming in. If you want to come to Tanzania, book up your plane. South African Airlines, has it said it has cancelled? No. Everybody is coming in. The problem is the AI images. Somebody is even using South African demonstration that you had in 2020 and placed it on the road with which is not in Tanzania, Dar es Salaam. These are images of AI that are there to discredit the government of Republic of Tanzania. Some of us liberators who liberated our countries, who were fed by Tanzania, who were in Tanzania, will not accept. We shall stand firm with the President Suluhu until we get an amicable solution. We are not going to fall in neo-colonial tactics that are destroying most of the African countries.
Now the question then is, what now? Because you know the what has unfolded publicly, the fact that two of her strongest opponents could not take part in the election itself. Why is this the case?
Do you know why? People are not explaining the truth. These guys were preaching divisive politics. They were trying to separate Tanzania from Zanzibar and Pemba. They were not good people. It is like somebody in South Africa saying Swaziland owns the whole of South Africa, isn't it? Can you allow that? Which government can allow that? Let's be honest. No government can allow such rubbish to be peddled after Nyerere in 1964, in 1974, fought a bitter war to unite the two islands on the mainland. Tundu's Lisu mouth is like a water machine mouth that brings out very bad words. I know him. It's me who tried to persuade him to come and talk to the government of Tanzania. He agreed when he was in Belgium in a small room in exile when I went to meet him. But this guy, when Magufuli died, he celebrated. You can't celebrate your friend's death. So that is the leader you want to bring. Two, the Constitution of Tanzania, my sister, says Tanzania has not paid me to say this. I am saying it from here because there is nothing that is happening. What the AI images you are seeing, this will be controlled by the security agencies. The Constitution of Tanzania says the winner of elections by percentage is the winner of the presidency. You can't change it because Tanzania has tribes, but very united. Tanzania has tribes, but it believes in unity. You believe that Tanzania has more tribes than South Africa, than Uganda, than Kenya, than any of these states, but they are united. So therefore, somebody who wants to bring divisions because you have been paid some money from Mr. George Soros, who's seated in Washington eating bacon, wants you to go on the streets to break up things without sitting down and understanding the electoral laws. Electoral laws are formed for you to follow. Code of conduct. You have refused elections in Tanzania. If you don't want to vote, there is no law in Tanzania, Lulu, that says you should vote by law. No, you can refuse to vote. So those who have refused to vote, thank you. Let's keep quiet. Let's wait for the results to be announced, and then we take it from there. Any lawyer will agree with me that you cannot demonstrate ban things over what you did not take part in. Useless.
Now, access to the internet, those type of things stoke even more fires. In a sense. Why do you think the government has decided to do that? Is it the issue of AI and the images that are all over social media? Is that what they're saying?
Exactly. Look at that. Am I not speaking from Dar es Salaam? Yes, I'm speaking from here. But if you're a bad guy coming to criticize what the government has done, to incite the people, will the government allow you to come? If you're a good journalist, you want to report independently, will the government refuse you to come? No, the government will allow you. Most of the journalists are here. People who are reporting positively are in here. But those who want to form AI images of South African demonstration with uniform of South Africa. There is no white policeman in Tanzania. You bring images of other countries and place them on another country. No, let's be honest
Dr.
and
Matsanga,
tell the truth.
Dr. Matsanga, we have run out of time, but I have to ask, we have a team on the ground, Channel Africa reporters and correspondents who were not able to, we were not able to get access to them, during that time while they were there in Tanzania, and even now. What is the problem there? Because as a representative...
They didn't register early enough. And if they have satellite phones...
Dr. Matsanga, they did. They did register early and followed all the procedures. But unfortunately, we were not able to speak to them.
I'm not speaking for the government, Lulu. I am speaking as an East African, an African, a Pan-African. What is the beef? Maybe if you go for journalism, South African radio should have bought them satellite phones, which can override any institution. Even when you're in South Africa and you report, am I not reporting with my satellite phone?
This is now it. We're speaking to you, and another person we spoke to because they had a strong internet connection. So, in that sense, it has created a bit of a situation in terms of reporting.
The internet has been again cut down to that is the communication authority of a country. Any country that is in danger depends on the security of that country. So for me, I can't analyze the security of Tanzania, but the truth is, yes, internet has been curtailed for some of these people who bring AI images that are now coming now. They are saying the airport has been occupied. The airport is not occupied. You can go there, come out, if you are not causing any trouble. We cannot accept that.
Yes. Well, Dr. Matsanga, unfortunately, we have run out of time, and we'll have another conversation once the results have been announced and what the way forward is on from there. Thank you so much for joining us on Africa Update.
Thank you very much, Lulu. The way is South Africa must land South African way. You vote, go back home and sit. That has not come. Our democracy must change. And I think the competition, the democracy of one man, one vote is useless for Africa. We better go back to a model of China. When China went back 40 years, Lulu, where they are now, you can see they are lending us money. African democracy, no, there will be no winner, no loser who will accept results. Even Bob Wine in Uganda thinks that he will win when he knows he can't even win. So he will cause only trouble.
Yeah.
I talk my mind.
Dr. Matsanga, we'll leave it there. Thank you for your time today. That's Dr. David Matsanga, who is an expert on all things politics and analysis on the African continent and across the globe. He was joining us on the line from Tanzania. Our news headlines up next with Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Lulu. The Tanzanian government has downplayed protests that have rocked several cities since a general election earlier this week as isolated incidents, saying it is working to swiftly restore normalcy. The United Nations has called for an immediate ceasefire in Al-Fashir, the capital of Sudan's North Darfur region, following its capture by the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces. And the Trump administration says it will limit the number of refugees admitted to the U.S. to 7,500 over the next year and give priority to white South Africans. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective. Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
It's a very good afternoon from the Sports Desk. I am Mosibu Dimakura with the latest sports news at the Sawa. So Tanzania Premier League giants Young Africans, also known as Yanga, have officially appointed Pedro Soares Goncalves as their new head coach. He's from Portugal, and following a mutual termination of Roman Fall's contract on the 18th of October. So the announcement comes just a few hours after the Yanga president Hersey Said confirmed that the club would also unveil its new technical bench over the weekend, bringing, of course, to an end weeks of speculation surrounding the vacant managerial role. So Yanga have finalized the appointments of key members of the new technical team, alongside the head coach, who's Pedro Goncalves, the assistant coach Felipe Pedro, as well as the goalkeepers coach Fernando Pereira. Now, Goncalves, who is well respected across the African continent, joins the Tanzanian champions, boasting an impressive record where he has, of course, led a couple of clubs on the African continent, and also having played and coached in his home country, Portugal. Back home now, despite the limited preparations, as well as leaving just 4 days before the start of the Under-17 FIFA World Cup, and of course just a few days before they match against Bolivia, Amajimbo's head coach Vela Khumalo is banking on the quality of his team to carry them through. Now, the South African Under-17 team left for Qatar last night in what will only be the country's third appearance at this age category in the men's division. Now, the team's preparations haven't been at their best, mainly due to funding issues, but Khumalo says the quality of these boys is going to show at the global showpiece.
Look, we are excited that we are on our way out, and we want to thank the association for helping us through, and we hope that we are going to make the country proud. And it was very important that we take these young ones and expose them to the World Cup stage, so that their future will be looking good. So we are hopeful, and like I indicated in some media to say, the talent is going to take us through here. Our boys are talented. Other than any other things, I think the talent is going to help us to go through.
On to rugby news now. Springbok centres Jesse Creel as well as Damon Dialende says the midfield battle against familiar foes in the Japanese team should be dynamic, fast as well as intense. South Africa will kick off their series of November internationals against Japan at Wembley Stadium on tomorrow in London. Creel as well as Dialende have also been playing the rugby in Japan for the past 4 years. The 4-time world champions will face Japan for the very first time since the 26-3 win at the 2019 World Cup quarterfinals in Tokyo, Japan. It also helps that a few of the Boks players play their rugby in Japan, and they also know what to expect from the Japanese side.
It's going to be really important for us to obviously slow their ball down. Japanese rugby in general want to play at a very high tempo and a high speed. So get the ball out of the rack as quickly as they can and kind of beat you with tempo. So it'll be important for us to slow their ball down and not give them what they want.
Dialende also says especially looking forward to the midfield battle between the two nations. He and Creel know their opposite numbers very well, but Dialende expects the main battle to be at the breakdown.
The speed of the breakdown will be the most important thing we get right this weekend. We've watched a lot of clips where the scrum half gets the ball out in less than a second, so it will be important that we make our hits and we make them properly and legally, and we can transfer the ball down from that.
And finally, in tennis news, number 9 seed Felix Auger-Aliassime reached the quarterfinals of the Paris Masters by beating German Daniel Altmaier 3-6, 6-2 and 6-3 at the Paris Da Defensa Arena yesterday. So the world number 10 Auger-Aliassime still remains in contention to qualify for his second ATP finals after doing so back in 2022. The Canadian will now face Monjes Kopi qualifier, that is Valentin Vacherot, in the next round of the Paris Masters. And that concludes your sports news this hour. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, our email address is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Alternatively, call us on +27 11714 4459. I'm back with more sports news in the next hour. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Mosibu Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Conversations are happening, and Channel Africa is at the heart of them. We tell the African story with clarity, pride, and purpose, reaching audiences that matter to your brand. Partner with us and connect your business with listeners across borders in multiple languages and markets. For partnership opportunities, sponsorship, or sales, email us at partnership@channelafrica.co.za. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Business News on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Good afternoon. And our first business update this afternoon, East Africa's largest lender by customer base, Equity Group Holdings, has posted a strong set of results for the third quarter of 2025, with profits surging by more than 30%. The group attributes the growth to its diversified operations across banking, insurance and technology. Daniel Ominde reports from Nairobi.
Equity Group Holdings, one of East and Central Africa's largest financial institutions, has reported a net profit of $418.7 million for the 9 months ending 30th September 2025, a 32% increase from the same period last year. Group CEO and Managing Director Dr. James Mwangi attributed the strong performance to diversified revenue streams, improved operational efficiencies, and a robust recovery in the Kenyan banking business.
The African Union Commissioner for Agriculture, Moses Vilakati, says the continent must put concerted efforts to tackle the scourge of hunger. Vilakati says it's concerning that Africa is battling with malnutrition with vast hectares of land. He's been attending the AU's Comprehensive African Agricultural Development Programme Summit in the Rwandan capital, Kigali. The gathering has brought together farmers, experts and policymakers under one roof. Kaelihle Kumalo has more.
The African Union has made a startling revelation that almost 300 million people in the continent are facing hunger. The Continental Body's Commissioner for Agriculture, Moses Vilagati, says Africa is battling with a number of challenges, including high food inflation, climate change that is likely to affect food security, and conflicts in certain regions.
The South African Reserve Bank Governor Lesitsha Kganyago says there was no reason to delay a push for a lower inflation target to 3%, despite persistent pockets of inflationary pressure from administered prices and wages. Kganyago says that sticky administered prices for electricity and water, as well as multi-year public sector wage agreements, should not delay efforts to lower the target. He says there have been wage agreements that have been set up for over 3 years. The National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa, NUMSA, in the Northern Cape province, says it will approach the Labour Court to interdict Ekapa mine and stop them from dismissing workers. This follows the decision by the mine to lay off over 350 mine workers. Frustrated workers have accused the diamond mine of lack of consultation and refusing to pay off monies owed to them. NUMSA provincial organizer Nkosikhona Lela says this matter needs urgent attention.
This layoff will last 12 months. It means if the terms of application is not approved, then these workers will be left with no salary for the next coming 10, 11, 12 months. It's going to be a problem.
Further afield, the Chinese President Xi Jinping has told leaders attending the Asia-Pacific Summit in South Korea to deepen economic cooperation in the face of global uncertainty. The Chinese Foreign Minister says Xi, fresh from his talks with US President Donald Trump, warned that changes unseen in a century were accelerating across the world. The BBC's Nick Marsh reports.
Xi Jinping has stuck around in South Korea. Unlike Donald Trump, he's been meeting with Japan's new Prime Minister. He is meeting, I think, with Mark Carney, Canada's new Prime Minister. And who do they have in common as a new adversary when it comes to tariffs and trade? It's Donald Trump. So Donald Trump has left South Korea, but he's very much looming large in all of those meeting rooms at APEC.
And now for our first look at the indicators this afternoon. $1 US in Nigeria is trading at 1,449 naira. In Botswana, it's 13 pula 66. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 34. And in Zambia, it's 22 kwacha. Moving to the BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 real 36. Russia, 79 rubles 98. In India, it's 88 rupees 56, China 7 yuan 10, and South Africa $1 is trading at 17 rand 24 cents this afternoon. $1 is trading at 75 pence to the British pound and 86 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $4,000 per ounce this afternoon, platinum at $1,580 per ounce, while Brent crude oil has gone down a bit to $63.99 a barrel. Those are your business news. I'll be back with another update in the next hour. For any business news stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or give us a call on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Bontle Headbush.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time.
It is 12:46 Central African Time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa on DSTV's audio bouquet channel 802, OpenView channel 628, and on www.channelafrica.co.za, as well as on the SABC Plus app, available on the Apple and Google Play stores. Today's quote on hashtag Africa Updates ask that we focus on the developments, including Sudan, Mali, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. And we want to know from you what the impact of armed conflict on Africa's peace and stability is. Share your thoughts and your views on all our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram at Channel Africa 1, on Facebook at Channel Africa. You can also send us your comments and voice notes to +2763 as 406 9126 hashtag Africa Update Us.
Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802.
It is 12:48 Central African Time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. Now, new research from the Institute for Economics and Peace shows that shifting rainfall patterns are driving global instability. The 2025 Ecological Threat Report finds that regions experiencing more extreme wet and dry seasons face 4 times higher conflict deaths than those with stable rainfall, while natural disasters displaced 45 million people in 2024, are the highest figure recorded since 2008. And for more on this, we are joined on the line by IEP, that's the Institute for Economics and Peace founder, Steve Kilelia from Sydney, Australia. Steve, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Look, it's my pleasure to be here.
Now, Steve, your latest reports, it links changing rainfall patterns to rising conflict risks. Explain how rainfall concentration directly contributes to higher levels of violence and instability.
Right, so what we've noticed, and this is probably an offshoot of climate change, is that the dry seasons are getting, on average, are becoming longer, where the wet seasons are becoming shorter and more erratic. Now, what that does is that puts stress on the food systems, and that includes agriculture as well as cattle. Now, what we find is the terms of conflict doesn't necessarily mean there'll be more conflict, but what it does is acts as a multiplier to systems which are already stressed. So if you've got outstanding grievances, you've got areas which are already short on resources, where let's say they're overpopulated, weak governance, and outstanding conflict, then it's a lot more likely to add to it. Whereas what we find is in the areas of the world where seasonality, or where the dry seasons are becoming shorter and the rain is getting more spread through the year, then we find that there's a reduction in violence. And that's why you get the 4 times difference. Or it's actually 50% difference.
Now, the report highlights that areas with more extreme wet and dry seasons, it experience 4 times as many conflict deaths. Now, which regions are currently most affected by this trend?
So if we look at it and looking at sub-Saharan Africa, it's the areas of the Central Africa, but the countries which are worst affected are Niger, Burundi and Uganda. So they'd be the three which are worst affected. We found in Southern Africa, or at least over the last 5 years, actually conditions have improved. So that's improved in South Africa, Botswana and Zimbabwe as well. So it varies quite dramatically depending on which part of the world you look. Madagascar is another area which has been extremely negatively affected as well.
Now, in 2024, yes, I'm right, natural disasters displaced 45 million people, the highest figure since records began. How do these displacements influence the broader social and economic stability?
Well, it depends on the resources which are available within the country. So if the countries have got adequate resources, generally the systems can cope. If we get into countries where the poorer countries, where the governance is not as good, it's not as much money to be able to look after people, then the displaced people then move into other areas. That now puts stress on food there. If there are grievances between the different groups, then that can lead to conflict. And so it generally has a stressing factor. Now, with natural disasters, generally the people do return to where they come from. That's some months later, or up to a year later. Now, with conflict, it's quite different. Where the causes of conflict for people to migrate, then quite often it's a long while before they come back, and that's where you see the large refugee camps.
And what role can governments and international organizations play in mitigating the security risk posed by ecological threats like extreme weather and water scarcity? And just also for interest's sake, have you managed to engage some of these governments that are being highlighted?
So the reports only come out today. So it's yesterday. So it's a little bit early to actually engage with the governments, but we would see us engaging with governments over the next 6 months or so to create more awareness around the issues. So where you can see that this changing seasonality and the weather patterns, that's the areas now you can overlay with past conflict, you can overlay with poverty, and overlay with other forms of resource scarcity. And now they'll give you an indication of the areas where you may need to plan for in the future. So therefore you can put contingency plans in place. For countries, they can do the same thing to better understand where the issues might be. The other thing is to have the people trained in emergency relief, because we can just see with the hurricane which has just gone through the Caribbean, just how bad some of these modern storms can be. And we've seen many in Africa over the years, Malawi, for example, 2 years ago. So the government can now start to look at the areas which are most likely to be affected, and then start to look at what those contingencies plans be if there was a sustained drought for many, many years, or the patterns change for the long term, because that's then going to force migration. And so then there's a need to be able to understand what those migration patterns might be.
And just looking ahead, what does the 2025 Ecological Threat Report suggest about the future of global peace and resilience if climate-related pressures continue to rise?
Well, I think there's a number of different issues going on. What we find is the likelihood of deaths through conflict increase dramatically when you get the seasonality and when you get greater than 2 to 3% population growth. Now, the population growth in Africa actually over the last decade has improved really quite dramatically. And so you've seen that the birth rate has jumped from 4.9 down to 4.3. So now South Africa, we've seen a drop in the percentage growth in the population from 1.55% per year down to 1.26%. So that's a good outlook in many ways for the future. So looking forward, what we'd see is that weather patterns change slowly over time. So if we look at the change in, let's say, the last 5 years, it's 0.5%. That's not a lot, but for climate events, that's pretty fast. So what we'll see, gradual change towards this seasonality with the dry seasons becoming longer. So if we look over the last 5 years, when we look at the split, it was 56%. The countries, the 180 countries covered, where it actually increased. And then the other 44% is where it actually, you've got the rain spread more throughout the year. So you see the changes are slow. Now, if we're looking at conflict going forward, the big drivers of conflict really relate in many ways to resource scarcity when we're looking at the sub-Saharan African continent. And then we can also look at some of the other conflicts, like, let's say, we're seeing going on in the Sudan, which are really fighting over territory. If we move up to the Sahel, it gets a little bit, it's different. What you've got is weak governance there, particularly around the extremities and the borders, let's say, particularly between Burkina Faso, Niger and Mali. And in those cases, it's been driven by Islamic jihadist groups, particularly JNIM and Islamic State.
And just in wrapping up, in terms of how long of a process does it take for you to do the research and put this report together?
So this one's really based on where we extracted information from a number of other areas. What we've used is a lot of satellite imagery, which we've brought together to be able to understand these changes in seasonality over the last 5 years. And we've done that globally. So looking all up, there's probably about 4 to 5 person years in producing one of these reports.
Well, Steve, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us, and hopefully we'll be able to touch base at some point and just find out how governments have responded to the report and what the plan forward would be.
Okay, well, look, I look forward to talking to you on that, and it's been my pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, Steve. That's Steve Kilele, that's the IEP founder, joining us on the line. It is 12:58 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa on Channel Africa from an African perspective.
Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802.
And that's how we wrap Africa Update today and for the week. It's been a great one. A lot happening on the African continent and across the globe. Continue with us on all our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram, and YouTube at Channel Africa 1, on Facebook at Channel Africa. You can also send us your comments and voice notes to +2763 at 406 9126 #Africa Update, and let us know which country you're in. And if you have any stories that you'd like us to highlight or to focus on, send us an email. It is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or give us a call on +2711 714 4459. Have a good weekend. Be safe, and thank you to our team. That's Tuto and Didimalo, as well as Talent. It's been a good one. Let's do this again on Monday. Bye-bye.